Hello, everyone. My name is Jacob Valdez, and welcome to another episode of Dust Jacket Radio. I'm here with my wonderful co-host,
John Glaze.
And John Glaze. You can introduce our honorable guest here today.
Okay, so we're with the Honorable Mayor of San Antonio, Ivy Taylor. We're really excited to have you on today. We're going to be talking about your book club and a couple of book programs that's going on here in San Antonio. So
Thanks.
Welcome aboard, Ivy.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
I'm the lucky one to start the question today. So my first question was, and I find it really exciting, and I just wanted to hear from you, is tell us a little bit about your journey and how you became the second female mayor of San Antonio.
Oh, okay. Well, let's see how I can condense that story. This was an unexpected path for me. It was not something that I aspired to. You know, I wasn't a little girl that said I want to be mayor when I grow up. So kind of in my mid-20s after college, I was kind of floundering and figuring out what, my life's passion was, and I discovered urban planning at that point. And I went back to school and got a master's degree in urban planning, and I landed here in San Antonio for a summer job and was convinced to stay by a man who gave me a ring and asked me to marry him. And so I always thought I was a community development planner focused on housing and neighborhood revitalization, and I always thought I'd work at a nonprofit that worked on those issues. But I didn't find a nonprofit job when I moved here, and he had moved me here and he was paying all the bills. So I was like, I gotta get a job. So I took a job working for the city of San Antonio, and that's kind of how it started. I left the city and I did go to work for a nonprofit, but then some community members recruited me to run for office, and I ran for city council, and that's how I got on the path to ultimately becoming mayor.
Mm-hmm. And then moving up in your career, did you have, and this is a question I ask everyone I interviewed, is did you have a mentor, either one-on-one basis or a book or someone that inspired you and that helped you moving along with this career?
I did not have a mentor, and that's something that I wish that I'd had, because I give a lot of talks and I talk to folks about, how they can pursue their passions. I think I could have been further along if I'd had someone kind of guiding me, but I never really found that person that I clicked with. That I've had people serve kind of a mentoring role, but I haven't had one person that I really point to as a specific mentor. But I am grateful for the people that have kind of helped along the way.
Okay, cool. I know to take a little bit of a jump back, and
Sure.
I heard that you're actually going to be doing a TED Talk on this subject in the
Yes.
future at the book clubs.
Yes.
Anyways, so when you were younger, apparently reading was a big part of what made you you.
Yes.
Would you mind elaborating on what inspired you to read so much when you were younger?
Sure. Well, when I started reading, I just loved reading right away. But then I think as I got older, part of the reason I read a lot is because I wasn't allowed to do much else. My parents were members of a holiness church that subscribed to the philosophy that most things were sins. Most entertainment was sinful, so I couldn't go to the movies or hang out with friends really, or we didn't have cable TV, so it was kind of like, well, there really wasn't much else to do but
that's
read.
the same with my wife. She wasn't. There was no TV allowed, or it was just classical music because her dad went to Juilliard, and
wow.
then also she was bedridden for a while. She had a bone disease, but then there was nothing in the house, so that's what she got her reading, and so it was kind of same identical.
So that certainly nurtured the passion, not having other outlets. But I read a whole lot as a kid growing up, and I used to be so excited when they used to have back in school in those days. They had where you could order those books where you'd pay like $1 through the Scholastic Book Club or something.
We were just talking about that, and that's going to be one of our questions.
Yeah,
down the road.
My next question was, what book programs would you like to see come back, or would you say are really important?
I don't know if they still do that or not. I thought a few years ago my daughter brought something like that home, but yes, they used to be able to order books, and there was like $1 a piece, and I remember I used to be like, Mom, can I have $10? Just like 10 books I really, really want. And she would always give me the $10, and I'd be so excited on the day when all the books would arrive and you go home with a stack of books. I'm not sure if that's popular anymore.
No, the last time I talked to someone from corporate from Scholastics that went to the Texas Library Association,
Mm-hmm.
which we're lucky we get to have it here this year, this coming up year. But I went to Houston and talked to them, and they said they're trying to do it again, but more of the digital age with the
Oh,
Kindles and
okay.
iPads now
Okay.
in the schools. So
But that kind of puts some kids at a disadvantage because they may not have the devices to be able to actually access the books in that way. I mean, I think kids that have a device, their parents could probably buy the books at Barnes and Nobles.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
That-
I think
that
there's
is a good
something to be
point.
said for good old-fashioned books.
Yeah, and a Kindle's like, it's $79. It'd be cool if we could get a program going where you could get kids some Kindles, and it's really not that much money in the long run.
yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's a side
No,
note there.
no,
I know
that
you-
is
you-
something to think about. When we do have here in Bexar County, we have a digital library that the county has been focused on, kind of a different format, trying to reach out to people. I think they have Kindles that you can check out there.
That's
That's
wow.
amazing.
I didn't know that. I am a San Antonio. I have the public library card, and you can download ebooks there for free
Yeah.
on the website. So it's a really cool program that's getting better and better. So if you could check out ebooks, that'd be fantastic.
So I know you have a lot of education under your belt, and I know that you did a lot of school from graduate, undergraduate, graduate. During that busy routine, how did you find time to keep joy reading? Because I know a lot of kids
Oh,
these days, they
that's a
just
great
hate reading
question.
after college because they're like, oh, I did it all for my degree.
Well, I think for me, after college, I was very focused on fiction because in college, you have to read all the textbooks and biographies and all kind of stuff depending on what you're studying. And so after college, I was really focused on kind of catching up on fiction. And then at that time when I got out of college, in the early 90s, was kind of a boom period in relation to kind of black urban literature. That's when Terry McMillan hit the stage real hard.
Good writer.
And so there was a lot to choose from. Terry McMillan, my other favorite from that time period is Diane McKinney Whetstone. And the lady that died, she had a brain tumor. I can't think of her name right now, but she was B.B. Moore Campbell. She was such a great writer. So I was like reading all that stuff in my 20s, and it was so different than from what I had to read in college that I felt motivated to keep reading.
And then when you were in school and what kept you going, was there a specific book that inspired you the most?
Well, it's hard to point to one, but in the talk that I'm going to give on Saturday, the TED Talk, I mentioned Native Son, which I first read when I was in college. And I'm not quite sure why the story resonated with me so much, but I do think it's amazing that a book that was written in 1940 about an urban black male in 1930s Chicago still is relevant today. Like there are so many themes that correlate with many of the conversations that we've been having about, race and class and cities and violence right now.
I think that's pretty amazing because even the book that you picked for this fall, book for your book club, it actually relates a lot to especially the third part with today's issues of what's been going on.
The name of that book was...
It's called The Fire This Time,
yeah.
and it's a collection of essays and poems by Jesmyn Ward. It's a little bit different from what I would usually read. I don't read a lot of poetry, and I don't usually read essay books, collections, but it was interesting to hear the diversity of voices on this particular issue.
Yeah, that sounds... Yeah, we were looking it up earlier. We saw that you
I
guys were-
recommend it. I just finished it. I had an overseas trip, and so that gave me plenty of time to read. That's when I can squeeze in a lot of my reading now, when I'm traveling, because otherwise it's hard.
Makes sense. I'm probably busy all the time. One thing I wanted to ask you is your book club. You guys obviously probably put in a lot of delegation in selecting a new book. How did you guys came to a conclusion on this one? Is there normally a process in selecting each book?
I hate to burst your bubble, and people ask this question all the time, but we don't have a committee and we don't have a process. I just pick a book that I want to read.
It's
I pick a book that I want to read and that I want other people to read.
Okay. Cool.
And so we try to kind of line it up with things that are going on or happening, you know, on the calendar or, you know, in society in general. So we thought The Fire This Time was a good pick because of all the, you know, discussions about race and police and all that stuff. So we thought that was a good pick. In the past, I've picked books, you know, alongside different celebrations like Hispanic Heritage Month. We read a book by a Latino author last year that talked about growing up in South Texas. So yeah, there's not a formula.
Well, that's
I hope
okay
that
too.
doesn't disappoint anyone.
No, it doesn't. That's honestly, that's probably how that's how I pick my books. I just just go with it. Another thing about the book club I was curious about, when you guys are reading the discussion that goes along with the books, I was kind of curious, what do you guys typically like to highlight in books, and what's the whole process like?
Well, that varies from discussion to discussion because really, you know, we work in partnership with the San Antonio Public Library. And so the different library branches, they'll have folks decide to get together for a discussion. Some of the other discussions I've participated in have been at some of our senior centers around the city, which I think is great. You know, seniors that are retirees, they have plenty of time to read, and then they want to get together and talk about the book. So I think it depends on who's in the group that is gathering for the discussion, what direction things go.
All right. Cool.
To follow up to that question, and it's not one that we have script, and for the San Antonio book show that's coming here to San Antonio, the book fair. I'm
Book
sorry.
festival.
Are you going to discuss about your book club during that time?
Oh yeah, I'll certainly be promoting the book club, but the book festival has grown so much over the last few years, and so I think it's held in April, and it's just a great day for people to get out, meet the authors, find out, you know, what's soon to be published.
We'll actually be attempting our first live show there. The book
Okay,
festival.
that'll be cool. That'll be great. So yeah, this past year I was on a panel. I'm trying to remember what book we were reading then, but I was a part of a panel discussion about whatever our book club selection was at that time.
Okay. That's funny though. I'm still thinking about how you just pick books. You're like, well, this one is going to be on the book club.
Did you? What books have you really liked so far? I know it's kind of difficult to remember when
From
you
the book club?
Yeah.
Oh, I've liked everything that we've read. Now I remember what we read was that book about. Gosh, I can't think of the name of it, but it was a story about Nazi Germany. The Book Thief was the name of it.
Okay.
So,
So
yeah,
amazing.
The Book
I just-
Thief was
Zusax,
Yeah.
the author.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Book Thief's fantastic. I just read Ricky Tin Boom recently. I don't know, The Hiding Place, Ricky Tin Boom.
Oh no, I haven't read that.
That's a powerful book, also about Occupied.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
I kind of went through a phase this past year where I read several books about Nazi Germany. I also read this book about the U.S. ambassador to Germany in the early 1930s. Of course, I can't think of the name of it. Had one of those over 40 moments, but it was all about kind of the lead up to World War II and what it was like for him being an ambassador there in Germany during that time. So I had read that, and then I read The Book Thief, and then I also read this other book. It was a memoir by a woman who was of Russian descent, and she had been. Her family basically was pushed out of where they were in Russia by the Nazis, and she ended up in a concentration camp as well. So it's very interesting that I didn't spend a lot of time studying that time period in college, so it's just really fascinating reading about. So, but I just think there's a lot of lessons to be learned because people kind of write it off like, oh, that could never happen again. But I think unless you really understand how and why something like that happened at that time, you know, it's hard to say it can never. And it has happened again. Rwanda, it's happened in other places. So
Yeah, I've been in the military, and I've been on some places that I see it still in other countries.
yeah.
I know you have a lot of responsibility as being the mayor of San Antonio, but what is your plan, or are you on trying to get more younger people to read more?
Well, I want everybody to read more. I really think we need to improve our literacy rates here in San Antonio, and so that's part of the reason why I've started the Mayor's Book Club, just to try and highlight reading, get people talking about books, getting adults to model the behavior that they want children to emulate. And so I think it can have a huge impact on our educational outcomes here as far as high school completion and college attainment and completion rates. We do still have quite a bit of work to do there. And I think us being a more literate community, has multiple benefits, and so that's why I.
And it's funny
try
you
to
brought that
highlight
up
it.
about being model parents. The parents need to start reading first before you expect your kids to do it. And I'm glad you brought that up, because miraculously this weekend, me and my wife bumped into a 8-year-old girl who's reading The Hobbit, and she loves reading it. But I'm like, The Hobbit, that's not something an 8-year-old would read, but it's because she sees her parents continuously reading, and she was like, well, what are y'all reading, The Hobbit? I want to read it too, and then she's there
Right.
now reading it.
Yes. So, yeah, at home I model the behavior. Unfortunately, my daughter, she doesn't love reading the way I did when I was her age. She'll be 13 in a couple of weeks. But I still think there's time. Every now and again, she hits on something she likes. She kind of likes a lot of that science fiction stuff. She definitely, there are many books at her disposal at home. So.
Yeah, there's so many.
It's difficult when you're younger to find something that's interesting, because you typically, as a parent, I imagine you want your kids to read the great books that you read that really resonated with you.
Yeah.
And when I was younger, I just wanted to read Calvin and Hobbes,
That's still reading, though.
Yeah, right.
That's still reading.
It is, absolutely. But that if you just read something, anything,
Yes.
it develops into a great love, I think.
Yes.
And is the same as you both, your wife to distract herself. I had some stuff going on at home, and I just wanted to zone in and laugh, and that's why I read Calvin and Hobbes nonstop all the time. So it just makes life better when you read all the time, right?
I agree. Hey, that sounds like a great bumper sticker. But I have to admit, this morning, actually, I was sitting in my office looking at the books, thinking, okay, this is getting a little out of control here, but I know I'm not going to stop. I'm addicted. Some people love to come to I used to love to go to the public library when I was a kid. But when I got to college and then we were required to buy books, after that, I was just addicted to buying books.
Absolutely.
And so we have a lot of books at home, a lot of books.
Did you, later in your life, would you ever consider writing a memoir or a
Oh,
biography?
yes, most definitely. Most definitely. My husband says, when are you going to write that book? Because ever since we've been together, I've told him I'm going to write a book. So, yes, that is definitely something that I want to do.
That's awesome. John, do you have any other questions for?
No, I think that's pretty much it. We got everything. The TED Talk. When is the TED Talk going to air? Do we know any of the details on that yet?
The TED Talk is on Saturday.
Okay.
And it's going to be at the Whitty Museum.
Oh, okay. Oh, and here in town.
Yes.
When would they put it on their TED Talk?
I don't know when they'll air it, but yeah, we're recording it on Saturday.
That's awesome.
And that's when you're going to start focusing about basically on your book club alone and what you're.
I'm
No,
going to be
it's-
talking
no.
about my life through books.
Books.
No,
So I'm going
yes.
to be talking about books that shaped me.
Cool. I'm looking forward to that. No, you're not going to spoil anything. Can we get a little bit? What are you talking about? No.
Well, I do mention Native Son. I talked about that. I'll mention one of my other current, well, not current, but more recent books that I've read that I really love. A book called The Triumph of the City by Edward Glaser, who's a Harvard economist that talks about why cities are successful. And he actually holds up Houston as a very interesting model of a place that's able to embrace the past and still continue to remake itself, and why it still holds a lot of opportunity for so many people in comparison to many other cities around the world. He makes an interesting point about historic preservation, trying to strike that right balance on historic preservation, because I've never been to Paris, but if you've been to Paris, like the most famous boulevard there was actually a recreation of that boulevard. So he says, if folks had been stuck on preserving what was there before, we wouldn't have like the most popular part of Paris right now. So just an interesting book about cities, their social makeup and their physical makeup. So, you know, as a planner, I kind of, you know, geek out on stuff like that.
Well, he's got the
but-
same last name as me, so I got to read it now.
Yeah. And before we let you go, Madam Mayor, can we get a little teaser on what's in the next book for spring? Or you haven't gotten to that
Oh
one yet?
gosh, I think I did pick it, but I can't quite remember. We made up a list of which books were next, but I honestly can't remember. My mind is always swirling with books. You know, I'm sitting here thinking, what am I going to read next? Because I read 2 books while I was on my overseas trip. I read The Fire This Time. I also read this book called Hillbilly Elegy by this guy named J.D. Vance about poor whites in kind of Appalachia and what their plight is and how, you know, how they're struggling in the context of modern day society. It was kind of interesting, given some of the conversations we've been having with the upcoming election. But anyway, so I don't know what I'm going to read next.
Okay.
Do you have any inspiring words and to our listeners out there to find a great book or to just keep going and reading?
Oh, certainly I encourage people to keep reading, you know, whatever method you come up with. I have a friend who was doing an alphabetical thing, so she
Oh, yeah.
she was only reading, you know, she was going through the alphabet by author. Or if you get really interested in a particular topic, like I was telling you, I read quite a bit this past year about World War II and Nazi Germany, or a particular place. So, I mean, there's so many different directions you can go. We have an excellent public library system here where you can explore. If you like to buy books, there are also many options to get them at a discount. Sometimes at the libraries, the Friends of the Libraries, they have
I go to the
sales
bookseller
as well.
and the public library.
Yeah.
That's where you get
Is there
great finds.
any book you wish everybody in San Antonio would just read so that we could all be a better
The
place?
Triumph of the City.
The Triumph of the
I wish,
City.
when I read that book, I said, I wish everybody in San Antonio would read this book.
Okay, guys. San Antonio, you heard the call. Triumph of the City.
Well, thank
Um,
you so much, ma'am.
and
we
I also-
really appreciate it.
You'll notice we're not in our regular studio. I just wanted to thank the Landa Library
Yes.
for hosting this episode today.
This
It's
is a beautiful and inspiring place here.
It is, absolutely. It's very rustic. There's nice artwork everywhere. And the building is just, it's beautiful from outside.
Yes.
I feel like I'm in a manor out in the woods.
Well, John, you want to close this out?
All right, cool. Yeah, just thank you very much for stopping by today. Keep listening in for another fantastic episode next week. We look forward to it. And guys, please keep reading. Look up all the books we mentioned today. And we look forward to talking about books in the future for you guys. So take care and keep reading.
Keep reading, guys.
Yes, keep